Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. What's going on? Masters of the Universe was just released. This will be my post-credit scene video for all 3 of the post-credit scenes and what they're doing with the sequels. I know there are a lot of questions based on the box office of this movie, the expected box office. I was surprised at how much they Babe Ruth-style shot-called the next movie in all the post-credit scenes. Even Marvel nowadays has pulled way back on what they do in the post-credit scenes, but they very clearly wanted to tell you what's happening in the sequel movie in these post-credits. So careful for spoilers for the movie if you haven't seen it yet, because we will be talking about the plot of the movie and the end of the movie. Right after I got my power sword, turns out I need to get a whole other sword of protection, so Mattel, please send me that new sword. But the end of the film picks up 6 months after He-Man kills Skeletor during the final battle in Castle Grayskull. All the main hero characters are wearing way more accurate costumes to their original Filmation 1980s cartoon versions. You can see Adam and Teela wearing their new clothes here and some of the other characters. After they do a meme of the extreme laughing from the cartoon series, and Cringer almost breaks the fourth wall, being confused why everyone is laughing so weirdly, like why is this funny, why are people laughing? They make a joke of Adam coming up with a He-Man name for himself when he was 10 years old. So in universe, the explanation for everyone's names is that Adam came up with their names when he was 10 years old, but they're not their actual proper names that they go by. So like they make a joke of Fisto, Ram Man, Mechaneck. So he came up with the He-Man name when he was 10 years old, and Teela being the warrior goddess, which is also after the toy line as well too, which she kind of laughs at like, okay. Then they all make fun of Adam again as he runs off to change into He-Man and change Cringer into Battle Cat, with them also pointing out that they saw Adam clearly as He-Man during the final battle 6 months ago. Why is he acting like it's secret now? And they're just going to be nice to him and pretend like they don't know that he's He-Man now. The big teaser for his next adventure right after this is helping the Avionians, the bird people. Stratos leads their people. He wasn't in the main part of the movie. I think they're just setting him up to meet Stratos in the sequel, like they'll use Stratos a little bit more during the next movie. Then in the first mid-credits scene is Orko doing a reference to the PSAs from the classic 1980s series, which would play after episodes. He-Man would normally call out the moral message of each episode, sort of recapping the events of whatever the episode was. So this is basically Orko doing that. So for everybody that wondered where Orko was in all the trailers, he was in the movie, but not in the main part of the movie. He was just in the post-credit scenes.
Uh-oh. Now for my next trick.
I didn't see who the voice actor for him was, but Merman is also standing behind him in a crowd of people in the marketplace of Eternos, where the main part of this end of the movie took place. There was also an Easter egg for Merman and the Mer people on the map of Eternia in front of the Castle Grayskull. Right after this, during the graphical end credits, they had stylized versions of all the characters from the movie, but Orko also appears with them multiple times in the lineup, like they're all walking together doing hero poses, and Orko is there with them. So I think this is confirmation that during the 6-month time jump right after these events, Orko has been active working with He-Man and the heroes. So like he's been part of the group, but it didn't happen till like the 6 months after the main part of the movie. My assumption is they'll just do more with him in the sequel. Like they just thought that he was one too many things for the main part of the movie. There were too many things they're trying to introduce to brand new audiences. Then the second post-credit scene is like the big She-Ra scene that everybody was going crazy about. Queen Marlena talks about giving up hope for both of them coming home, both of them referring to another child, and Man-at-Arms then clarifies saying she'll come home to us one day, specifically referring to Adora. Then the camera cuts to Adora wielding the Sword of Protection, calling the power and transforming into She-Ra on a hillside overlooking Hordak's castle, the Fright Zone, and a man enters frame. You don't see his face, but he calls her Force Captain Adora, which is a reference to how she was raised by Hordak as one of his Force Captains. She turns around and says, "No, not anymore," and then the camera pans down to the Sword of Protection again, the jewel in the sword. While this was happening, they also played some of She-Ra's theme music from the classic Filmation series. I think this means that she is just transformed into She-Ra for the first time, and this is meant to happen at the same time as Queen Marlena's speech about Adora is missing, so she becomes She-Ra within about 6 months of Adam becoming He-Man for the first time. It kind of seems like they're changing some of the details of how she got the Sword of Protection and how Adam meets her for the first time, like the events of the Secret of the Sword movie. There were a couple references earlier in the movie to explain why she's not in Adam's childhood drawing. She's not with young Adam before Skeletor attacks at the very beginning of the movie in the flashbacks. What they're probably doing is just changing a little bit from the original Filmation origin story in The Secret of the Sword. When they created her in the original series, the original toy line, they had to retcon her into the classic He-Man cartoon because they didn't create her till later after they'd already created the He-Man character.
You may have defeated us, but you'll never see this child again.
The story was that Adam and Adora are twins. When they're babies, Hordak attacks the palace, captures her, escaping to planet Eternia, where his main base, the Fright Zone, is, in his larger forces of the Horde, and he raises her to be evil, thinking that she comes from that planet and not remembering that she's actually Adam's sister and she comes from Eternia. During the actual post-credit scene, Queen Marlena clearly thinks that Adora is still alive out there somewhere, and the sorceress has probably told her as much, so I'm assuming this is also part of the reason why you don't see the sorceress that much during the movie, because she was probably busy off trying to give the Sword of Protection to Adora. So it's kind of like they're speedrunning the first part of the plot of the Secret of the Sword movie, and that was happening while the end of the main Masters of the Universe movie was happening. Very clearly, though, they're trying to say that Hordak is going to be the main villain of the sequel movie, and it will most likely take place on Etheria, on her planet, and they'll adapt a version of The Secret of the Sword with some changes. They changed He-Man's backstory significantly for the first Masters of the Universe movie, so just expect them to do the same for her backstory, too. The actual She-Ra actor playing her is named Lauren Selu. It's not clear if she's just a stand-in for the post-credits and she'll be recast for the sequel movie, or if she's the actual She-Ra actor they plan on using in the next movie. I actually kind of thought that it was Millie Bobby Brown based on her look. So don't be surprised if they recast a different actress for the next movie when they do eventually do that at some point. We will talk more about her in that particular post-credit scene during my full breakdown video in a couple days. During the final post-credit scene, Evil-Lyn picks up Skeletor's skull off the ground in Castle Grayskull in front of the altar of the Power Sword where it fell earlier in the movie, smiles, says he's looked better, and then walks out of Castle Grayskull with it, looking very unbothered by the fact that it is just a skull and he's seemingly dead. While this is happening, while she's walking away, joking about the skull, you hear Skeletor's cackle in the background to show you that he will return in the sequel, even though He-Man killed him. So it's likely, early theory, that his soul just went to Subternia and Evil-Lyn will bring him back with either magic, Hordak's help, or they'll literally just travel to Subternia at some point at the beginning of the movie. He-Man breaking the Havoc staff might also have some consequences that they'll use in the sequel. They'll probably get into Skeletor's backstory a little bit more with Hordak in the sequel too, because of Hordak's involvement in the sequel, and how Hordak was responsible for giving him the Havoc staff in the first place that also melted his face off. So technically Hordak is responsible for Skeletor getting his face melted off. During the movie, he seemed like he did not remember that he was Keldor with all of his scenes with Randor, so they're kind of implying they'll go with the newer backstory from the newer cartoons that when Hordak gave him the Havoc staff, he basically wiped his memories as Keldor, so he doesn't remember that he is Keldor, Prince of Eternia, and the brother of Randor, and the rightful king of Eternia.
He is my blood!
But not your heir!
Keldor's father is King Miro, Randor's father, from a previous woman before he married Queen Marlena and then had Randor. So Randor is the younger brother, Keldor is the older brother. You can look at all those scenes earlier in the movie when he puts the crown on his head as a soft reference to that. Like, technically, yeah, the crown should be his. Keldor's mother comes from the blue-skinned Gar race that lives on Eternia. They never explained in the canon who his mother actually was, just somebody that King Miro had a relationship with before he met Queen Marlena. Maybe we'll see more of the Gar race during the sequel to sort of set up that twist, and maybe we'll get a flashback to young Keldor and young Randor to also explain that. They kind of did that during the Kevin Smith Masters of the Universe series on Netflix to sort of set up the Keldor twist. They also had William Shatner play the version of Keldor so that he sounded different from Mark Hamill's version of Skeletor, so that it wasn't like immediately obvious that Keldor was Skeletor. But one of the big ideas, though, is that Skeletor didn't know or didn't remember that he was Keldor for most of the movie. Otherwise, you would have heard him yelling more about that. But it's one of the reasons why, subconsciously, he is so obsessed with the throne of Eternia in the crown. During the movie, though, he's mostly focused on just getting the power, but he also subconsciously wants to tear down Randor's throne in his castle, which he doesn't later realize until he starts remembering everything. It's because he should be on that throne. It should be his crown. Even though most people think that the Keldor twist is a more recent development in like the 2002 cartoon and like more later things that they've done recently, they never actually featured Keldor in the original 1980s Masters of the Universe toy lines, but they did feature him in the final mini-comics called The Search for Keldor, where they canonized him as the long-lost brother of King Randor. But in that story, he eventually learns the secret and then tries to keep the secret, thinking that it will undo him. Like, nobody can learn that I am secretly the brother of King Randor. Later during the 2002 Masters of the Universe series, they expanded on this in like a really big way. And then the Kevin Smith Masters of the Universe series also kind of ran with a couple of details that they barely fleshed out in earlier series too. They kind of do this with new Masters of the Universe cartoons when they come along, where they'll like take little bits of lore and expand on them. I expect them to do stuff like this during the live action movies too. What is probably going to happen, though, is that if this new Masters of the Universe movie doesn't perform well enough, Amazon will still do the sequel eventually, but it'll just go straight to Amazon. Best example of that is the Henry Cavill live-action Voltron movie. They said is not going to get a theatrical release. They're just going to release it on streaming on Amazon Prime whenever they're ready to do that. So if Masters of the Universe is not theatrically successful, they'll probably just do that with a sequel movie and spend less budget on the sequel. My assumption right now, the timeline on that for the next Masters of the Universe movie is that it's at least 3 years out, maybe 4 years if it does very poorly at the box office, but like eventually they will make another one.
Well, we're waiting.
The only other real big change that I'm kind of expecting is that if they do a sequel movie, is that Jared Leto will not come back as Skeletor and they'll get some other actor to play the role, because he seemed very, very unhappy with the way the movie went, the marketing. They wouldn't let him talk. They wouldn't bring him to any of the marketing events. He wasn't at the premiere. So it just seems like the studio doesn't want to have anything to do with Jared Leto, even though he was actually pretty decent in the movie. So do not be surprised if Skeletor shows up in the next movie being voiced by someone else, and then when you see his face as Keldor, he looks completely different too. He doesn't look like Jared Leto. Everybody post all your reactions in the comments below and let me know what you want them to do with the She-Ra character and with the plot of these sequels that they're working on. I'm in the middle of working on my full breakdown and Easter eggs video for the entire movie, so be sure to enable alerts for my channel so you don't miss that. I will try to post that by Saturday morning. There's going to be a bunch of stuff happening in the next couple of weeks too, so I'll try to do videos for everything. Everybody click here for that full breakdown and Easter eggs video, and click here for my Masters of the Universe review. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.